Hey, welcome back to Rust Hoarder Garage. It is time to introduce the next project. And this was not even supposed to be the next project right up until last week. So with those with little to no, what should I say, attention span, I'll just cut right to it. And then I'll go over the details. The next project is going to be a 1956 Chevy half-ton short bed pickup. The reason that's happening is kind of a roundabout way. You'll notice I have this big 56 here, which is actually a 3800. That's on a dually chassis. We have a half-ton short bed chassis, and then we have this pig that I just picked up this morning, which is a 58 half-ton stepside, I assume 3100, there's no badges on it. And the goal is to use some of everything and make one truck. So the way this all came about was, this guy was first, the big truck. If you've been following the channel, you know I built a 1951 Hudson, Doc Hudson, which is set to go into the Memorial Day parade coming up the end of the month. And one other thing I wanted to do, I thought would be neat, would be make a Mater truck, to make the tow truck, right? So, not to be boring, but you know, Mater as a cartoon character is not an individual truck. It's kind of a mismatch of different body styles and whatever. But one feature the truck does have is the bulge on the door and the front fenders, which is indicative of a 55 to 57 Chevy truck. Now, these trucks are not easy to find. They're not cheap. What happened was I was just keeping an eye out for anything 50s dually to make this into, and not even to be on the channel. This is just something I wanted to build, whether it was on the channel or not. I just thought it'd be something cool to build. And this popped up. Now this, and I have the fenders for it and the nose and everything. This is a 1956 3800, and it's a dually. It's not a real long wheelbase. It's kind of was somebody's hot rod at some point, because this thing has an $800 power disc brake kit on the front. You see the rotors in there. And it's not real long wheelbase. It's pretty cool. It's got newer single piece rims. If you know anything about Widowmakers and two-piece rims, you know they're not the ones to have. You want to upgrade to a single piece rear or a single piece rim, which is what these are. You know, these are 17s and not the originals. There's the camera. But those are, you know, pretty cool wheels. The cab is in amazing condition. I mean, just ridiculous. I mean, you don't find them in the Northeast like this. It's pretty crazy. And I got some stuff in there that I threw in. The aluminum radiator came with it, but there's some things I threw in there. But basically, what's going on here, this is too nice to turn into a parade vehicle. So, and for those keeping score at home, I misspoke. These are 19.5s. The original tires on these trucks are 17s, I believe. These are 19.5s, which makes them much easier to get tires for. So that's either here or there. So, I basically came to the conclusion that this truck is too nice to turn into a parade vehicle. It's just not going to happen. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know, I'd always like to have a 55 to 57 Chevy half-ton truck. I've always liked them. And, you know, a silly thing, you get older, and the younger guys will run into this when you get older. If you're a car guy, you remember cars that you had or rode in or dealt with when you were younger. Now, when I was walking to school in middle school, still burned into my head, there was a house I used to walk by every day, had a primer black 55 to 57 Chevy truck sitting in the driveway. Never forget that grill. I mean, it's iconic, right? And it was there, and the engine was out, and it was up on an A-frame gantry hanging there. And I mean, it was there for years. The truck is long gone. I think the gantry is still sitting there. And I don't know if there's an engine hanging on it, but I think it's still there. But anyway, that was like burned in my mind, and I thought that was so cool. I'm an old car guy as it is, but I really liked the 55 to 57 Chevy trucks. The cars, 55 is my year, but the trucks, 55 to 7. I even like the Apache 58 9s, but I like these the best. So when this all started to come together, I'm thinking, hey, maybe I should just build myself a 56 half-ton truck. Keep this chassis and build a mater with some other cab. But take this cab, this nose, which is amazing condition, find a bed, find a chassis, build a half-ton truck. The next week, this is all happening like within days, like a week or so ago. This chassis pops up on Marketplace. All right? This is a 56 half-ton short bed frame chassis, original. It looks like somebody had sandblasted it at some time. There is some primer on it, but it got, surface rust from sitting. But perfect foundation for what I want to build. So then, I need a bed, right? You got to hustle to find this stuff. So I'm looking on Marketplace, and I'm always looking at stuff. And I looked, when I was looking for a tow rig for Mater, guy had a tow bed in the back of a C10 for sale. And in the corner of the picture, I see that rear fender in the picture. That wasn't for sale. The tow thing was for sale, the tow rig, the boom and all that. But that was in the picture. Then I get into phone tag, get a hold of the person selling the tow rig, which was really somebody doing it for somebody else. Call 2 other people, get a hold of the owner of this truck. I say, hey, is that for sale? Sure, it's for sale. Okay, let's go look. Now, this truck is roached, but it is fixable. It is rusted like every other one like this in the Northeast, but I can save this. The bed is the best part on this truck. The bed is in the best condition. And that is what I'm going to use with this chassis, with this cabin nose, and I'm going to build myself a 56 3100. So what are the plans for this build? Well, certainly not stock. No way, except for the body. When I build my older cars, I don't like chop tops. I don't like dechroming them. I don't like shaving door handles. I love the styling of these vehicles. That's why I build them. However, I don't want manual steering, 100 turns lock to lock, a solid axle on a huge leaf spring pack, and something that rides like a buckboard. These are farm vehicles. These were not made to cruise the highway, okay? I want them to cruise the highway. So we're talking independent front suspension, power disc brakes, power steering. We're going to update the rear suspension. This rear axle's got to go. I don't know what gear ratio it is. I don't care. It's going away because I want 5-lug, because I'm going to put mags on it, probably Torx Thrust Ds as usual. Rear suspension's got to change. Those leaf springs look like they're made for a dump truck. That's all going away. As far as engine transmission, well, it's getting an LS, a Vortec of some sort, probably a 5.3, and probably or most likely an automatic. My wife can drive it if she wants to drive it. It is not going to get, I guess you could say, painted right now. It's staying primer black, and it's not in the budget to paint it because I'm crazy, and the budget is $5,000, including the cost of the truck. Now, I'll show you how I do this. This is how I do low buck builds. There may be more than $5,000 laid out at any time, but parts and things will be sold and taken off so that you, in the end, will have less invested than you really thought you would, and definitely less than you would have if you went catalog shopping. I've said it before, When I was a kid, and if you were a car guy, you read all the magazines, and I read them all too. And there was a Carcraft magazine, a special edition that came out where they built a 57 Chevy, and they used a second-gen Camaro as a parts donor, where they took the engine, transmission, rear axle, and a ton of other goofy little things for it, kept track of every dollar, and in the end, they spent almost nothing. The parts car, the Camaro, actually made them money. That is the way, in my opinion, to build a budget hot rod and get something much more than you thought you could get for the money outlaid. So, with that in mind, as I build this, I'll keep track. There'll be 2 rows of costs because some parts I have around, but I'm still going to assign them a value. So there'll be one line that'll be the actual value of every part put into this build, and on the next table or next line will be what it cost me. Because if I have, say, a parts car and I take the front suspension out of it and I scrap the car and I basically have no money invested in that suspension, for me it costs 0, but it still has a value, so we'll list it that way. In the end, you know what value you have on the vehicle, but the cash out of your pocket is going to be surprisingly low. It's still going to be hard to do $5,000 budget on a Tri-5 Chevy because they are very popular and they're not cheap. But I think I can do it. It's not going to be a show vehicle, but it will not be cut corners either. All systems are going to be going through. So now that you have the layout of how this is going to go down, the first thing on this build is going to be the chassis. Going to set up that chassis. We're going to put a independent front suspension in it, deal with the rear suspension. I'll do a video on each step. I'm going to try to show you how you could do this, and I'm also going to try to do this relatively simple. I'm going to try to build this truck in a way that I think anybody could do this. I mean, if you're not sure on a couple things, you get some help from friends, but I think the way I build this truck will be certainly doable by anybody. So again, as I said, the first thing is going to be the chassis. So let's talk about the front suspension. All right, so let's walk over to the boneyard. These are all vehicles that will be gone very soon. We have some trucks back here, LS donors. They're going to get scrapped. We have a Corvette. We'll talk about that. The Buick is sold. I have a Rambler wagon there for a future build. I got plans for that. And then a 41 Buick over there, fastback. I think that's going to get sold too. But the gem we're looking at here is this pig. This is a, I don't know, maybe I think it's an 84. I'll have to double check the numbers. Jaguar XJ6. This is going to be the donor for the front suspension. This is a generation of Jag I buy the most. These really didn't change from the 1970s up to 1987 in this body style. It's a Series 3 Jaguar, they call it. And they are dirt cheap because they never run, including this one. And this only has, I think, mid 40,000 miles on it. They're junk. I mean, Lucas Lightning, Lord of Darkness. I mean, these things have electrical systems and fuel injection systems that are just ridiculous. You wouldn't want to mess with them, that's for sure. But the beauty of these cars are they are 4,000 plus pounds in weight, meaning that the suspension on these things is designed to handle a heavy load, not some spindly Mustang 2 thing that you would buy online. These things are all forged control arms, 4-piston disc brakes, power rack and pinion steering, and the track width is perfect for most older builds. That's why I like them so much. And what's even better about them is that these cars are unibody, and that is a sub-assembly that drops right out of the car. It's pretty amazing. These also have the very popular independent rear suspension if you want to go that way and use it. I am not. As we talk about budget, here's how this works. I paid, all in, with gas to get it, $550 for this car. They don't sell for much more in most cases. It had a nice set of knockoff spoke wheels on it. with the hub adapters and everything. I sold all those wheels. I sold them for $250, meaning I'm $300 in on this car. Okay, so call the front suspension $300, but not yet, because the rear suspension will sell for $250 in a day. Every time I list them, they're gone. So I guarantee that's going to sell. And then as far as scrap goes, even if I take nothing else off this car, this thing's worth $150 in scrap right now. This car is actually going to put $100 in my pocket, and that front suspension is going to be free. That is how you build a budget hot rod. So that is how this build is going to go. Going to wheel and deal, manipulate some dollars in, dollars out, and in the end, come up with a really cool budget build. So, other thing I'm going to show you, since the first thing we're going to do is a chassis, might as well do the front suspension first, right? First video of the series, we'll get this pig in the garage, and I will show you how to remove the front suspension from one of these. It's really easy, and I've done it on a car trailer. You don't have to lift, but I'll do it on the lift so you can see all the hardware, and it isn't much, that holds the whole for front suspension in this thing. And then we'll get into putting it into the chassis. All right, so I hope you follow along on this. This is going to be fun. I've never built a Tri-5 pickup before, so this is all going to be new for me as well. But we're going to do a whole lot of fabrication, but not crazy fabrication, stuff you can do. I'll give you all the measurements and the angles that I come up with, and you can use it to your best of your ability and do what you think is right. But I'll show you how I'm going to do it. I think it's going to work out cool, and I think in the end we'll have a cool truck. So we'll see you on the next video. We'll get this thing inside and get that suspension out. Thanks for watching. See ya.